Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm that sim racing bloke, and today I'm going to be telling you how to get into drifting on Assetto Corsa in 2020. I originally bought a G920 and Assetto Corsa specifically for drifting a little over half a decade ago. I've seen and used almost every single mod and perfected my skills. Since then I've branched more and more into more conventional styles of driving, and drifting has helped a lot in those styles of driving too. Even if you're not that interested in drifting, it's a great skill to pick up as a driver. It will teach you useful techniques such as throttle, brake and clutch control, as well as training your counter steering muscle memory. So carry on watching if you're interested in drifting or just improving your driving skills. In this video I'll be going over several topics to help you get into the world of simulated drifting. First, wheel and sim setup, then how to drift, car mods and track mods. But before we get into the rest of the video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Only a very small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed, and it would mean a lot if you did. Now onto the video. Thank you. So to start us off is the wheel and sim setup. There are just a few things to set up before you begin, but they're important to do or else you'll be limiting yourself massively. Firstly, you'll need to set your wheel's degrees of rotation to 900. Most people should already be using 900 degrees of rotation, but if you're not, you'll need to change it. Using a full 900 degrees enables you to make micro adjustments mid-slide. If you use anything less, you will lose a lot of usable steering angle, which is important to drifting. If you use say 450 degrees, it will become a lot more difficult to catch and hold a slide as your steering will be too sensitive. In the same vein, you'll want to set your force feedback to something a little weaker than what you're used to. If you use high force feedback, it will be exponentially harder to drift and you may even injure yourself in the process. I like to set my force feedback from 50 to 75% depending on the cars I'm using, but of course this will vary from wheel to wheel. Next is the handbrake. Handbrakes are an important aspect in drifting, and it's a good tool to have in your drifter toolbox. More serious drifters will have a dedicated handbrake controller, such as the one from Fanatec. However, don't worry if you don't have one. Many drifters use buttons on the wheels for a handbrake and it works just fine. Personally, I like to use the flappy paddle for the handbrake as it's much easier to reach while you're mid-drift. So make sure to set your handbrake in the Assetto Corsa settings. Lastly, a clutch. Clutches are just as vital, if not more vital than a handbrake. I'll go over when to use a handbrake and clutch later in the video, but you should set these things up now if you haven't already. Most sim racers should have a clutch pedal enabled, but if you don't, make sure to find it in your settings. Drifting is an art. Getting the car to go sideways requires a delicate balancing act of skill and concentration. In this segment of the video, I'll be teaching you the most popular drift techniques, which generally combine and link together to create more advanced techniques, which you'll pick up along your drifting journey. I assume most of you know what counter steering is and have a basic feel for car control. However, if you don't, mid-drift you'll need to turn left to go right or right to go left. Once you get into the car you'll get a feel for it, but it can take some getting used to. In its most basic form, you want to keep the car out of traction. This can be a little unintuitive at first, but after some practice you'll be able to hold the car mid-drift. Now onto the basic techniques to break traction. The most basic technique in drifting is the power over. The power over is done using a short burst of throttle to cause the power surge, making the rear wheels lose traction. Hard acceleration will cause the rear wheels to spin faster than the speed of the car, and this loss of traction effectively causes the rear of the car to go light and slide. If you're steering into a bend, the back will go wide. If you're travelling straight, the steering motion will start to drift in the desired direction. All you have to do is counter steer and balance the car in a drift. It's simple, right? Next is the feint, also known as the Scandinavian flick. Steering into a corner, and just as the car is about to settle into the bend, a flick of the steering wheel in the opposite direction and stepping on the throttle will upset the car's traction, causing the rear to break free. Stay on the throttle and hold the slide throughout the corner and you'll be drifting. The clutch kick is a great technique to use in lower powered cars. Dipping the clutch to disengage the engine, then reapplying it suddenly. The aim here is to use a different engine to road speed To initiate an oversteer skid which can be held in a drift. Clutch kicking gives you an instant boost to your drift and can help if your car is straightening up or losing revs. Depending on your speed and the apex of the bend, you can use your handbrake to initiate a drift. It's a useful way to break the rear traction. You can combine this with other methods to catch and continue a drift. Additionally, if you need more angle mid-drift, the handbrake can be used to stick the rear of the car out even further. Now you know the basic methods, it's time to put it into practice. I recommend loading up a track and practice drifting in donuts until you can do at least 10 donuts in a row without spinning or having to restart. Once you have the donuts down, then you should move on to figure 8s. Figure 8s will teach you how to transition between corners. For these figure 8s, a useful tip is to let go of the throttle as you transition. This will ensure that your car stays under control and you don't spin. Once you have started to drift, you will need to keep the car balanced. Gentle and progressive control is key. Steering motions must be fluid and not jerky. Your throttle application also needs to be progressive and sturdy. Drifting is all about being smooth. If you overdrive the car, you'll probably spin out. So, to recap, power over using the throttle to break traction and initiate a slide. Feint your steering one way, then the other to transfer the weight and enter inertia drift. Clutch kick is there if you need an extra boost of power. This can also be used to initiate a drift. Handbrake can also be used to initiate a slide or to give you more angle mid-slide. Now you have the basics down, you're ready to head out on track and try drifting some corners. I recommend that you do this in a private session and not online, as there's a high chance you'll just get in the way and annoy people. No offence. So pick a car and a track and get out there. I recommend Assetto Corsa's default content for this, such as the drift track and the drift E30. These are two solid, well-rounded choices for learning to drift in. We'll get into mods and other tracks later. So once you're out on track, you need to approach your first corner. On the drift track I mentioned, the first is a long sweeping right-hander. You should approach it in third gear but not using all the revs. I recommend about 40 to 50 miles per hour. Once you're ready to enter, point your nose into the corner and do one of the techniques that I previously mentioned. You can either do a power over and mash the throttle, feint or clutch kick, or even use the handbrake to get the rear of the car sliding. To start with, I recommend doing power overs. So, point the nose of your car into the corner and step on the throttle. The rear of the car should now be sliding. Keep your foot on the throttle and counter steer as needed. Once you reach the end of the corner, lift off the throttle and let your steering wheel return to centre. Now you may not get it the first time and that is totally okay. Drifting takes a lot of practice until you get a good feel of the physics involved. Keep trying this on every corner of the track until you can link an entire lap together. This will take time and will probably frustrate you, but trust me, you'll get there in the end. You should also throw in some other techniques I taught you to broaden your drifting toolbox. Get used to using all of them as it will help you massively in the long run. So now you can successfully drift on track. Now it's time to start modding, every Assetto Corsa's favourite pastime. In this segment I'll be letting you know of some of the best drift mods available for Assetto Corsa and some you should avoid. My first recommendation is of a few car packs that are the pinnacle of AC drifting mods in my opinion. These mods are called World Drift Tour or WDT. These cars feel extremely high quality and the sounds, models and physics are close to the AC default content as anything else I've tried. They feel mostly realistic and provide great force feedback. WDT has 3 separate packs of cars for you to enjoy, including street cars, pro drift cars and winter beaters. All 3 packs are great and this is my number 1 recommendation for new drifters. Ebisu is an infamous motorsport complex that houses several tracks that drifters love. Most of these are in Assetto and they are great tracks. However, my favourites are Ebisu Minami, the one with the jump drift, and Ebisu Touge, a small track with large elevation changes that replicates Touge roads. I highly recommend you check these tracks out as they're so renowned in the drifting world. Tamada is one of the most popular drift circuits on Assetto Corsa. It is completely flat and has a large array of corners. It's perfect for drifting in tandems and honing your skills. Usui Pass is my favourite Touge road available on AC. Unlike many other Touges, it's not so slow and tight that you're stuck in second gear the whole time. You can let your car rip here while it's also very technically challenging. If you're interested in Touge drifting, I can't recommend Usui enough. Meihan is a classic drift circuit. Like Tamada, it's totally flat, but the corners are challenging enough that it's exciting. At the end of the long straight there's a fast right-hander that tightens into a hairpin. There are also multiple layouts that you can choose from, both extending and shortening the track. This track is a must-have for any drifter. So that was my guide for Assetto Corsa drifting in 2020 going into 2021. As always, all mods are linked in the description. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons for more Assetto Corsa content, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.